Ahead with Ezekiel's Wheel. I am going to I've got a word for you actually. And I actually forgot my foreground music, but who cares, right? But I've got a word for you today. I'll go ahead and fade this out so we can go ahead and get started. But hope you had a great weekend. Didn't catch you on Friday because I did the 15-minute rev earlier in the day. And I wanted to make sure to get that out, and then I had a busy day the rest of that day, so I apologize if I didn't catch you then, but I hope to catch you today. But today's 15-minute rev is called Pure Power, the Art of War, and the 4 gates that you have to make it through. Pure Power. Hey, how's it going, man? It's called Pure Power, the Art of War, and the 4 gates that a front runner has to make it through. This is all during contraction point 2. Now in 2 weeks, actually it's the 30th of April, you're already probably feeling, hey Susan Berger, good to see you, man. Hi Pascal. But if you've noticed, the witchcraft starting to raise up around you now, where it's kind of like you feel like you're kind of walking in a fog a little bit, maybe a whole lot, and you're wondering, what is this kind of a thing? Well, this is that. Hey Elizabeth. So this is the beginnings of contraction point 2 that we all love so dearly every year. So what does that look like? I'm going to describe it here in the book of Joshua 19:1 through Joshua 20 verses 9, where it speaks about a tribe on the move, where you understand who you are and whose you are. You've finally gotten plugged in, hopefully, to the right tribe. If you're not, you're going to be in trouble because it's going to cause you some difficulties. But when you start plugging in correctly, you start moving very, very quickly. Okay? So the Bible says the first shall be last and the last shall be first, meaning that as God moves us through contraction point 2 or into the new land, it's our job to look out for the least of these, to look out for those people around us while trying to rebuild our walls through Christ, while trying to get deliverance. So we're looking out for people that are less strong in the spirit, and we're trying to move forward. We've got a tool in one hand to rebuild with and a sword in the other, but we're also making sure that everybody's in the safest position possible, okay, unless they're called to walk with a different tribe, which is another conversation for contraction point 2. But each tribe operates differently because of the anointings those tribes are given as sheep. And it's our responsibility to cull through them to ensure everybody's in the right field in this season. It's all about who you're connected to, their roots and their fruits, because you become who you hang around. And if you're under or connected to the wrong tribe, then you're not going to be equipped with the right tools to fight with in contraction point 2. And you'll probably get stuck. So there's also probably not going to be a whole lot of grace for you to be there. So I believe this is part of the new strategy of the Lord in the making of the Joel 2:5 army. Each battalion serves in a very, very different capacity. And if we're truly operating in the way that God wants us to operate in for this new move, we're always going to be looking out for the least of these, and we're always going to be making sure that everybody's connected appropriately. That's another strategy, because God says not everybody can come near his heart. God says he calls us to guard our own hearts, right? So as he's calling us to guard our hearts with due diligence, he's saying, why wouldn't I guard my own? So we're moving through the outer courts, and now we're trying to maneuver in through the inner courts as we start heading into contraction point 2. How is that? It's because the tribe, the circle, it's revolving around the Ezekiel's wheel, or the clock of God. So there are 12 tribes that we move through, or 12 personality attributes of God that he works us through, to where we have 12 opportunities per year, 12 months per year, to acquire attributes of God's heart. Okay? And part of that is making sure that we're aligned with the right tribe, so we get the right tools to be equipped with. So in the past, it hasn't made much difference which tribe we were connected to. But in this season, it's everything. Because we become who we hang around. And because the equipping gives us capabilities to fight the war ahead. And each vessel serves within a particular region for war, which means you live in a particular state. Hi, Ida, sorry. Each of us live in particular states, okay? And this is prophetic. This is high-level intercession when I'm saying this. Every nation has a calling. So we have an international, federal, state, city, county, and personal level, okay? So every nation has a calling, a prophetic calling. Then every state has a prophetic calling. Every city has a prophetic calling, as well as your own individual vessel. So that's how individual God has made us. Now, why doesn't it surprise me that the enemy's trying to make us all alike? When God says you're uniquely and beautifully and wonderfully made, we're made in God's image. There are no two of us alive on the planet because God has individual tasks for us to do. We all house different attributes, different characteristics. So this is part of learning to come into oneness, even though we all have differences, being connected to the right tribe so we can serve a greater purpose. Okay? Which is why we're coming into contraction point 2. So this is why God created, I believe why God created the internet too, so we could all become equipped if we weren't in the right church, if those churches weren't available in our regions. And so God said, here, I'll give you the internet and you can get equipped the right way. And so this is the hour I believe we're stepping into as leaders, because God is becoming so strategic in the way that he's training us in the Joel 2:5 army, that he's requiring specific things of us, which are going to be requested of us as we enter into war. I believe we're in a season of war. And like Joshua made sure his sheep had all the tools that they needed in order to fulfill the mandate of the higher calling over the nation of Israel, while God fulfilled the lower mandate of individual callings. So God said, he told us, if we seek ye first the kingdom, we could ask God what we wanted, and it would be done through Christ as we attended to his own business. Ida, can you pray for me, please? I've got witchcraft coming at me. Thank you. So that brings us into territories which are doled out to various tribes. Each tribe has a mandate of the land that we've been given. Some leaders have been given certain states to house. Others have been given nations. Thank you. I can feel that. Thank you. And we bless the people praying that stuff, Lord, with 1 Corinthians 13:13. Bless them with all their mess. But as we come forward in God, I think it's important that we understand who we're connected to, their roots and their fruits. Do they house the right gifts that I can connect in and become a part of that body? Or am I just going to aimlessly wander because of my own disobedience? Am I staying in a place too long? Is it because of familiarity? Am I afraid of walking out of the old and into the new? See, church, we're not operating in church as usual anymore. We're not operating in church as usual. We're not being raised in churches and then growing up and dying in the same church. If you notice, God is cross-pollinating a lot of front runners. He's sending us into different places to get equipped, and then he's moving us on to another place to get equipped, and then he's moving us on into another place. It's part of that cross-pollinating, especially the front runners, because you have to have as many different weapons for the season. Thank you. And there are cities of refuge along the way where Christ comes to those who are out there by themselves, or they're connected to certain tribes, but it's still not the right tribe for some people to be connected to, in his attempt to redirect him into the right place of his heart, which is the whole point of contraction point 2. Either way, they're either connected through wrong relationships, jobs, distractions, or just thrown into a bar ditch and they're stuck. But Jesus is right there always to rightly connect us in this season if we ask. And so that's really, really his focus right now with what he's trying to do in the body. He's trying to get everybody rightly aligned in the right battalions for the Joel 2:5 army with the right tools, the right tribe, so we can fight effectively as a whole body on earth as it is in heaven. God is a God of order. So when we learn to move with God in the right direction, he begins to teach us the art of war. I was just teaching our teams about that this morning. And as we begin to learn to move with God's Spirit, learning how God unfolds a thing, do we see how God teaches us to wait for timing or to war correctly? But it first starts with the tribe that you're connected with. You can't fight along somebody that you don't have anything in common with. What do I mean by that? That means if somebody is not at the same spiritual level, because we're all at different levels, okay, that's a given in some bodies, but there are some tribes that they've learned the succinction, they've learned the order of God, and they're moving and fighting and advancing and taking land together. They understand the order of God. They know how to move with the times and the seasons of God. They've learned the art of war. And that's what God is focused on. If he can use this particular body of believers to fight with effectively. Or is it just a church of believers that are there to socialize? They're just there to be entertained. God's not here to entertain us anymore. He's not here to entertain us. And if we don't know how to move with the Spirit during war, we can get ourselves killed. So learning to move with God is the most definite part of the art of war. And during contraction point 2, part of the art of war is learning to be rightly aligned. And then learning how love behaves. God is love. Learning to expect the best of each other. Learning to expect the best of God. And more importantly, learning to trust God and his leaders. Because true love expects the best of people, especially the Lord himself. And contraction point 2 is like the ultimate test that we walk through when we enter into it, because there's contraction point 1, which is the January 1 through April 30th. It's the season of deliverance, it's the chamber of God's heart that applies the washing of the water of the word, where we can get high level deliverance. And then we enter into fire, the fiery part of the chamber of it's the second chamber of his heart, excuse me. That's contraction point 2, April 30th through August 31st. And it's the hardest time of the year. It's the longest time of the year. And it actually overlaps into contraction point 3, which is chamber 3 of his heart. And that's where the vessel has been refined and it's being readied for resurrection power into the next level of spirit, into the air chamber. These are all components of any living body. Everybody has water, everybody has firepower or energy. And then it's refined. Hopefully it's made of an earthen vessel, and then it hopefully evolves into a higher spiritual level, requiring air to breathe. But this is the focal point of contraction point 2. And how do you know when contraction point 2 is started? Usually witchcraft is hammering down on your vessel. It begins early. It starts long before April 30th, which I'm talking to you about right now, because a lot of it, they hate when we teach about it. Like right now, I'm getting hit with witchcraft, and they hate when we teach you about this. But I'm going to plug on through. I'm going to continue teaching you about contraction point 2. These people can go to hell with their father, the devil. So the biggest part of contraction point 2 is it's trying to get you isolated, disconnected, wanting to be left alone, or you're focused more on your weaknesses, letting your emotions drive you instead of allowing the spirit of love to lead you. And it will test every bit of love that's already been instilled in your heart up until that point, because it's based on the prior season. But in order to go into a new season, you've got to get emptied out of the old things to prepare your heart for the new thing God's getting ready to do, the new portion of his spirit. It's the old wineskin being removed, readying you for the new wine. So remember one thing about C2, I always tell our people this: your feelings have nothing to do with your faith. Absolutely nothing. And there's no fear in love. If you really are who you say you are, God's going to put you to the ultimate test. You're going to go through the fire. And he's going to test you to see if you're really who you say you are. How do you respond under pressure? How do you respond when pressure's coming at you from all sides? when you've got people manifesting around you, when you've got financial situations manifesting around you, when you've got pressure, which is pressing you forward into the ninth of Av. All these things used for the good of those who are in Christ Jesus, to strip you of everything that's your housing on your vessel that's not of God, as he prepares you to move you through the eye of the needle. That's why the witchcraft comes. He uses all things for the good. And they're using it thinking they're going to hold you back. And it can't hold you back if you get stuck in the witchcraft. If you allow it to get you there, and to get you isolated, and to get you distracted or disconnected, and you want to do your own thing and you want to rebel, that'll get you thrown into a bar ditch. Unless you rightly connect and you stay focused on love. Because when we're focused on love, we're not driven by our emotions. We're walking with the Spirit. We're learning to move with the Lord like a blade of grass in the wind. We're learning to war with him. And we're not focused on the negatives of people. We're not focused on the bad things that are happening around us. We're just believing the best of God. We're believing that God is who he says he is, regardless of what's coming at us. That God's got a greater plan in store for us. We know that every test has an ending date, and that every year this is going to end as soon as we finish August 31st, entering into the high holy days. Because everybody's got something they need to be delivered of if we're truly evolving into the Lord. So let me read to you what 1 Corinthians 13 states. This is who God says he is. If I speak in tongues of men or of angels and do not have love, I'm only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have a gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains, can you imagine he said that? He's already talking about he's got faith, but don't have love, I'm nothing. If I give all that I possess to the poor and give over my body to the hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I've gained nothing. Love is patient. These are the characteristics you need to focus on in C2. Love is kind. It doesn't envy. It doesn't boast. It's not proud. It does not dishonor others. It's not self-seeking. Not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Doesn't delight in evil, but it rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and it always perseveres. Bottom line is love never fails. But where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there's knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part, but we only prophesy in part. And when completeness comes, what is in part disappears. When I was a child, I talked like a child. I find this very interesting. This is in this part. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. But when I became a man or a woman, I put away all childlike ways. For now we see only a reflection as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, and then shall I know fully, even as I am fully known. And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. And so then, in my opinion, C2 serves as a tool. Contraction point 2 serves as a tool, a fiery tool to force growth, if we allow it. Or if you get burned up in C2 because you're so in your flesh, it'll either consume all the dross in you or everything on you and push you higher because of suffering, or you'll get bitter. You can either get better or you'll get bitter. Notice I'm going up or sideways. The way you relate with people sideways is the way you relate vertically with God. If you're in your flesh, you're probably going to relate with God in the flesh, which means you don't go very far in your relationship with him. Usually means you get stuck, and you've been stuck in a place for a very, very long time, either in the spirit of religion or in your emotions. And like I tell our teams, your feelings have Zipola, nothing to do with your flesh, or excuse me, your faith. Your feelings have nothing to do with your faith. They're two separate entities. And I have to tell them that during C2, because the one place that witchcraft will strike is in the emotions, in your feelings. And if you're letting your feelings drive you, you're going to be like an emotional wreck through C2. You're going to be totally driven by your emotions instead of led by love. Love believes all things. And if I'm walking through the valley of the shadow of death, if I'm walking through fire, I know that God is with me. His rod and the staff, they comfort me. I know that no matter what pressure comes at me, I'm going to make it through. I know I'm in a test, and I'm going to pass it. And so are you. So in order, if you can picture this, and this is considered deep intercession actually, and this is another conversation for another day. So I'm not going to go really, really deep into this one part, but I'm going to mention it. If you can picture a circle, okay, around the circle are 12 gates, okay? The 12 gates stand for the 12 tribes of Israel. That's the outer court of God. That's God's holy clock. You move in through the outer court into the inner clock. And for those vessels that have been obedient in this hour, they're now moved. They've moved through the outer court into the inner court. Now they're moving in and establishing the heart like David. Those are the 7 gates around the inner court. Okay. They stand for righteousness, submission, obedience, mercy, love, something else. I'll have to get the 7 gates for you. But those are the 7 gates. As we enter into April 30th now, we've moved through the first 4 gates. And at the 5th gate is where God starts repairing 2 sets of gates at once. The outer court gate and the inner court gates, if you haven't had them fixed or reset. So that's why the pressure comes. Now, back up. Still get your circle, your 12 gates around you. Within that allotment of 12 months, or the 12 tribes, or your 12 opportunities to acquire aspects of God's personality, which are housed within each tribe, you've got 4 gates, 4 ruling tribes. Those are 4 opportunities to move through a gate. Okay, that's going to be October, I want to say February, April, and then August. Okay, those are the 4 gates we have to get through. And within each of those 4 gates, there are 3 feasts, Hebrew feast. Each feast, as we move through those gates to acquire those attributes of God, give us 3 opportunities to come before the Lord to find ourselves approved. Can we go to the next set of gates? And if not, you get to stay stuck at the last set of gates until you get them the first time. So it's like going around a mountain, and that's why 85% of the body is stuck in some port of contraction point 2, because everybody thinks they know everything. I don't know anything but what he shows me, and I'm not going to even presume that I do know. I'm just trusting him and following him every year through contraction point 1, 2, 3, and 4, through the 4 gates of his heart, the 4 chambers of his heart, learning to accelerate and go faster and faster with him, because I want to get up into love. And that's how you hit the promised land. But that's only a fraction of the conversation. There's more to that, and I'm not going to get too far into that. But that's how you do that. So each tribe does this as they move through each of the 12 gates, the outer court of his personality yearly. And then I've just described the other half of the test, which is restoring the 7 gates to contraction point 2 every year. And if you're lost in this, go grab my book Fragmented. It's on my website. Oh, by the way, our website's up. It's ezekielswill.org. Go grab it at our website if you need that. It'll explain all of it to you. It talks about the unredeemed clock versus the redeemed clock. When you get saved, you transfer over to God's redeemed clock. So, as we pass through contraction point 2, we either come out triumphantly or we get stuck, which leads us to Luke 19:28 through 48. When God shows up on our vessel. See, God's looking for a landing strip where he can land on, where he can pour out his glory on. Is that you? Or are you one of these people that you're just a feel-good person, you're in church to socialize? I'm in church because I'm resolute about becoming more like him. And in this season, judgment has hit the church where God is doing a complete heart inspection of his sheep and his leaders. Are they moving higher into love? Are they the landing strip where the glory can hit? And if not, God has to move on to another tribe. So he's looking for where he can pour out his presence right now. And this is a season of the heart where our hearts are literally, during contraction point 2, under fire, where all the dross is forced to the surface as we head into Pentecost for preparation. It's our second approval point, our second feast. Because resurrection power will not come unless we've allowed God to prepare our hearts. And the king is coming to set a table or to hold a feast of love, to where people will come to sit, but not all will be invited. Everybody wants to sit at God's table. Everybody wants to eat from God's table. Everybody wants to be with the king, but not everybody's heart is right. Oh, wow, I didn't know he was going to go ahead in this conversation, but I'm going to go here. It's interesting. Hey, Mr. Miss Cubis. It's interesting to me how many people want the power of God in this hour, and it's offensive. I believe it's so offensive to God when they show up to his table and like, Lord, gimme, my name is Jimmy. And all they want is they want God to gimme. I want everything you got from me. They don't tithe. They don't sow into those anointings. They don't honor the Lord on those vessels. They don't do anything like that. They just want what God has for power because they need the notoriety. They need their ego stroke. They need all these things that is of the flesh. And God's like, I'm not about your business. I'm about my business in this season. And if you were focused on love, you would be focused on getting free from those things that keep you earthbound, that keep me from releasing my power to you. Because I can't land on your vessel because you're too fleshly. You're too stuck in what matters to you, not what matters to me. And so we have the church now that's powerless, that's been powerless now, I want to say for about 20 years. And then they wondered why all the prayers stopped being answered. They wondered why all of their blessings stopped flowing. They wondered why things stopped going well for them. And it's because they got their focus on what was important to them instead of what was important to God. And so now God's in the process of redirecting our focus back onto love to where we can actually be blessed again and dwell near him and operate in the spirit and in the promised land blessings that we initially had when we were content with what we had. We weren't trying to be our own providers. We weren't trying to make more money, and that wasn't our God. And so now God is redirecting some of the body's focus, that 15% who have moved into this place, and he's now enduing them with power. He's enduing them with power, true power. But then we have a few that try to slip in without being circumcised, and they want to be given this loaded gun, and then they keep misusing it like they've misused everything else in their life, and they're abusing people around them. So God's like, no, I'm guarding my heart. If you don't want to get cleaned up, you're not coming and sitting at my table. I'm not going to allow you to in this hour. This is why God is getting so strict about who he's allowing near him in this hour. And so many people are getting offended. They're like, well, no, God loves us all. Well, yes, he does love all of you. He loves us all. But not everybody is going to come near him. Not everybody's going to come near the Holy of Holies because he can't dwell where sin is. If you're not willing to get cleaned up, and that doesn't mean next month. It means constantly. How fast do you want it? It's constant. Deliverance should be a common thing for the church. As common as signs, wonders, and miracles. It really should be. It was for Jesus. Jesus didn't have a problem walking up to the man with the legions in him and casting them all out into a herd of pigs. He didn't care what the people thought. It's man's problem when we care what each other thinks. Oh, I don't know if they're going to receive this. I'm in the Baptist church. I don't know. Ooh, they may not like deliverance. Ooh, what are the deacons going to think? Oh, God. Oh, what if we're not seeker friendly enough? Oh, who cares? Who cares? Really? God's people are hurting. These people are hurting. God's like, why aren't you helping my people? My people are hurting. They're not willing to talk about certain issues. I'm not on a soapbox. I'm just telling you what I'm hearing in the spirit right now. God is tired of us trying to save face, save our own faces, for fear of what it might cost our pocketbooks. He's like, if I'm really your provider, you wouldn't care, because you'll know I'm always going to take care of you if you're abiding in me and I'm abiding in you and you're obeying me and you're doing as I'm leading your spirit. I'm always faithful like that if you trust me, if you know love. But if you're focused on you and you're focused on your flesh, don't expect too much to happen, because I'm not going to do you with power, says the Lord. I'm not going to put a loaded gun into the hand of an immature child that chooses to stay immature, that operates and acts like a 8-year-old and gets so easily offended every time someone corrects you. Hey guys, good afternoon. The Lord says, I'm not here to entertain you anymore. Remember 20 years ago when the gifts showed up in the body and everybody was like, ooh, and ah, and so, did you hear about that prophet's in town? Oh my gosh, and we got to go to that meeting because she's a real prophet. He's a real prophet. Oh my God. And everybody was busy being entertained. And God's like, this isn't that. This isn't that. You've learned enough from 25 years ago until now to prepare you to walk and be equipped if you stayed rightly connected. If not, now's your season to get rightly connected. Stay connected. And quit feeling rejected because you're stuck in your flesh. Your feelings have nothing to do with your faith. Faith expects the best. Love expects the best of all people, especially the best of God. But when a leader comes before you and they're saying, hey, so-and-so, you know what? Please don't do this. Please, because the Bible specifically tells us not to tolerate the spirit of Jezebel, right? One of many spirits. And we have people beating up on people emotionally. We've got people acting and trying to sabotage each other. We've got leaders acting like this. And then we have people acting and getting offended when the leader, or certain godly leaders say, hey man, knock it off. Sit your rear down. If you're here to learn, sit down, be quiet. You might learn a few things. And you learn to get past the cover of the book and learn to read the book, because you miss a whole lot of good books that you miss. So many people miss so many blessings because they're so busy judging. We're so busy judging. The body of Christ has gotten so busy judging, just like society has. We think we're everybody's God. And everybody says, well, God has given me all authority to trample on snakes and scorpions. Well, big deal. Are you using it with love? Or are you abusing it, being all full of yourself and thinking more of yourself than you ought? Because if you're using it with the wrong spirit, that means you're committing treason. And it means you're committing treason against the king. You're serving the wrong camp. Lamentations 3:37-38 states, if God didn't speak a thing, it has to fall to the ground. So which spirit are you operating in? Which spirit are you submitted to? Which spirit you submit to is the one that flows through you, whether it's holy or unholy. And just because I told you a hard thing doesn't mean I'm the devil. It means usually you're immature and you don't like it. I'm just shooting straight up. Okay, let's get back to the king. He's sitting at the table waiting to have a feast. So the king is coming to set a table to hold a feast of love, where people can come and sit, but not all will be invited. We just said that. Because their hearts aren't right. And some will be thrust back away from the king's table because of this. That occurs because in order to eat with the king, or to eat and drink of this new wine, our hearts must be emptied of itself, to ready itself for God's heart, to replace our flesh with a new outpouring, that new move. I believe we're there. I believe we're there. And the heart, I'm going to tell you something. A key in the kingdom, the most powerful vessels I've ever met were vessels that were moldable and pliable. They didn't walk in with a rigidity and a mindset of, if you don't do things my way, I'm not going to play. I'm going to pick up my toys and I'm going to go home. It's not that. Those are the vessels that I find that accelerate the fastest in the things of the Spirit, are the ones that submit. They're the ones that are open to correction. They don't get offended. They was like, yes, yes, sir, or yes, ma'am. They're the ones that understand God in another person. The Spirit bears witness with the Spirit, and they expect the best of God. Now, there are ones out there that there are some vessels that are abusive. I'm not saying to submit to them. I believe Jesus corrected people like that. He didn't tolerate that. But if we're going to go higher in this new place of God's Spirit, we've got to make ourselves start growing up in Him, and to begin practicing and disciplining our hearts to do and say and be as love is, if we are who we say we are. So each level of God's Spirit, then, if we're going there, houses new tools that will equip a house or a tribe to do our jobs more efficiently, if we're connected to the right one, at higher capacities. But we have to be emptied first, which is the purpose of the fire in C2. C2 burns away any excess of anything that's not of God. It's also another reason the pressure comes. I've already discussed the pressure of witchcraft or circumstances or irritations of less mature people around us to test the current levels of love we say we operate in. I don't know about you, but C2 it is the most irritating time of the year for me. And it's like it will push your limits. It will push your limits. How much love we say we have. How are we who we say we are? So God, in this season, God's looking for real spiritual fruit or faithful servants. Do we belong to Him faithfully and completely? Are we willing to give God whatever He has need of in any season? Which means if He's like, Missy, drop this assignment and go over here today, even though He knows my whole schedule for that day. He's like, just drop it. I'll take care of it. Go over here and do this. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'll certainly do that. And He always shows up. He always makes it, and He always works it out. Or are we just in it for ourselves? We're just in the flesh. We're not looking out for those around us. We're offended by them. Instead, we put them down. Oh, do you know about that so-and-so? We're talebearers. Are you a talebearer? I hate that spirit. I really do. I think it's one of the biggest contributors to scattering. Or do you see what people are struggling with, and do you have compassion? Do you cover? And I want to state this before I go any further in this. Different tribes have different requirements because of the way God uses those tribes, okay? Don't judge what you don't know. If God has given a certain church body certain specifications to operate in kingdom with, it's not my job to go in and question those leaders. It's not my job. It's not my mandate. I've just been given this one to focus on. And this one happens to have been told when I was in heaven I'm called to be used by God to help bring the love and the glory back, which means God has us operating on a strict regimen of vetting people and of trying to find out if those hearts are sincerely committed to the process of getting free. Because it's an intense curriculum here. Intense. It's the cream of the crop. And I'm not saying we're better than anybody else. We're not. It's just what He teaches us to do. But that's whose mandate I'm following. I'm following the Lord's. And it's so that I can complete the job He's got me to do to move forward into the new. Because if you know what front runners do, all it takes is one of us to burst through. And you burst the whole body through. So, which part of your flesh needs to be burned off in contraction point 2? God is ridding His temple right now. This is a hard part of this conversation. He's ridding His body of the temple of thieves. He's tired of dealing with people who come in and make his temple a den of thieves? Are people stuck in religious spirits that only want what they want regardless of how they make other people feel in their thievery? And I've got news for these types of people. You think you come in and you're going to take something that's not yours, but you can't take something and make it your own unless your heart has been prepared to house it, because it won't land on good ground. Good ground is what allows it to take root. So thinking that we can take shortcuts in this season will only postpone the inevitable. We're either going to get free through the fire, or we're going to get consumed and stuck until we learn the heart lessons God's trying to instill. So the purpose of C2 then is to show us what's really on the inside of us. The good, the bad, and the ugly. So that God can free us from those things that keep us powerless. And this leads us to Psalms 88, 1 through 18. Psalms 88 talks about how not to end on a note of victory. How to get stuck. And it's actually one of the few Psalms that didn't end in victory, because most of them do. But it talks about a man named Haman, Hamen, not the Haman of Esther. And he was suffering really greatly. God hadn't given him any relief. But he kept believing the best of love anyway. He kept praying. And the Haman of Psalms 88, which is based on the family line in 1 Chronicles 6:33, from the Kohathites. He was a musician, the son of Joel. But in his difficulty, he was walking through severe fire. So the next time you want to say, nobody knows how I feel. Nobody understands what I'm walking through, as you enter into C2. Or you feel like the darkness has consumed you. Haman did. He literally felt like a dead man, or like a man drowning in a dark pit. He felt doomed, or like a man God had completely forsaken. And that's the way C2 will make you feel during part of it. You'll get to a part where you think the witchcraft is so bad that it's going to eat you alive. If you're stuck in your emotions, if you know how to battle witchcraft, you're going to know immediately to turn praise on. Get the mess away from you. Praise blows it out of your atmosphere. Blow the shofar. Get it away from you. Whatever you do, stay focused on love. Whatever you use to keep you in the Spirit of God, do that. But stay focused on God from April through August into September. September 15th is when things really start getting really, really good. That's C3. It's high angelic activity. But before you go there, you're going to go through. So, during this place, God wanted Haman to know that he knows how he felt, because he felt the same way on the cross, as he was suffering for us. And it makes for a few miserable months until the deliverance comes. But if we're diligent, we'll make it through. And actually, if you're diligent in early spring, from January 1 through April 30th, it makes C2 a whole lot more bearable. It lightens your load. But I really believe that God is so merciful that he's determined not to leave any sheep behind. For those who are doing the very, very best, God says, I'll meet you. I'll meet you. You do your best and I'll do the rest. But because you've gotten caught up in the darkness, the light gets lighter and the darkness gets darker. So if you're climbing your mountain and the darkness is caught up with you, that's what's happening to the people on the lower sides of the mountain who've chosen not to grow, or they got stuck or bar ditched. So that's why God's having mercy. He's like, don't leave no man left behind. Leave no man behind. That's the importance of the front runners. He uses your vessel to break through, and you break everybody through. You pull everybody, even your own bloodlines that have gone on before you. You pull everybody up. That's why they're rooting you on. God's using you to break everybody through him. So the bottom line is that C2 will test every heart to the core if we say we belong to Jesus. Because it's during these 5 months that God is asking us the question, are you really who you say you are? Which will test our ability to hold on to love and to press deeper into Him regardless of the suffering. The Lord's saying in this moment, as you're moving through these hard times, I'm telling you ahead of time, it's coming. But I want you to remember to wait on me, because the final verse of your psalm hasn't been written yet. And if you don't quit and you don't give up, in due season, you will reap a harvest as you move into the higher parts of God's Spirit. As you've learned the test. I always tell people, if you make it through one C2, you can do it again and again and again. And each one is very, very different, because each one gets more difficult and more difficult as the witchcraft becomes more intensified. But if you become more powerful in love, love never fails. Not ever. Love always wins. So wrapping up, the Proverbs 13:12 through 14. It talks about some people having to wait for such a long time that their heart gets sick. And it says, hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a longing fulfilled is a tree of life. Thank you, Holy Spirit. Whoever scorns instruction will pay for it, but whoever respects a command is rewarded. The teaching of the wise is a fountain of life, turning a person from the snares of death. And so what do I believe about contraction point 2? I believe that there are multiple lessons in that. I believe it's teaching the heart to persevere. I believe it's teaching the heart to trust love and to follow instruction, no matter what it sees with its eyes. If you believe in what you see with your eyes will fail you in contraction point 2. Everything about you is being a test. It's being tested. And I also believe it's teaching you how not to get thrown into a bar ditch. When you're so intently focused on the love of Christ, on the goodness of God, expecting the best after this 5 months is over with. No matter what comes at me during this 5 months, the test will be over as of August 31st. Sometimes it feels like it lasts all year. But if I can make it through this 5 months, I can do anything. Because I've learned to trust God. I've learned to expect the best of Him. And He'll reward you. Because every test has an ending day. Are you encouraged today? I thank you for listening to the 15-Minute Rev. We do these every Monday. Also, every Friday, we do the Compass for you on Wednesdays to try to keep you abreast of the different witchcraft levels and things that are coming at the body and at the front runners, and what we're dealing with as we're moving through contraction point 2 and through the other parts of God's heart. But if you're encouraged, consider hitting the subscribe button at the upper right-hand corner. Also, if you're looking for a tribe, you can go on our website at ezekielswill.org. We've got our new website up and operating. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to vet you. Not everybody's called to be a front runner. You have to have the grace to do it. But if you think you are, a few key points or a few indicators that you might be, or that you're extremely set apart. You don't fit in anywhere. Or that you have information that other people don't seem to have. It's way out there, being misunderstood. To those people, I'd like to say, email us. We'd love to work with you. We'd love to put you in an accelerated process and get you up into position. That's the people we're called to train. We're not trying to reject anybody. It's just the mandate on this ministry. But with that, I hope you're encouraged today. If I don't see you the rest of the day today, or if I don't see you Wednesday, hopefully I'll see you Friday on the 15-Minute Rev. Until then, have a blessed rest of the day, guys. See you later. Bye-bye.